We're excited to dive into some conversations and get to know you a little bit. Can you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what you've been doing recently?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Couldn't be happier tonight to go through some good combos with you guys. Yeah, so my name is Salvatore Ubaldini. Please call me Sal unless you're my grandfather or my dad and you're upset at me. No, but yes, my name is Sal. I live now in Long Island, Nassau County. I was born and raised in Mineola. I used to live in Italy for some time when I was growing up for about 2 years. Because of that, I had a repeat first grade. Fast forward to college. I got my undergrad at Malloy College in Rockville Center, graduate from Hunter College, both in accounting. Uh, I'm a nerd at heart, but numbers are what I do. So, and here I am today. So I have about 6 years in auditing experience, and today I work as a forensic accountant at K2 Intelligence.
Very nice. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of what went into your decision to go into the corporate environment and a career in accounting specifically?
Sure. I mean, that question's kind of loaded, but what led me to accounting was, my passion for numbers. And, in high school, I didn't know that I was going to go into accounting until senior year. For me, it was either accounting or physics. So you could tell where the passion of numbers came from. Yeah, but from there on, uh, you get through your second year of college, and that's really the tough nuggets of accounting: cost accounting, managerial accounting, uh, government accounting, which tends to finish it for a lot of folks. Uh, I have some friends actually that switched after that. They went into finance or management or business, which is great. They loved it. But so accounting isn't for everyone. But so I kind of knew from the start, which isn't your typical, uh, yeah, it's not your typical accounting degree story that you knew you wanted it out of the gate.
Yeah. So what would you say was the most difficult thing for you going from going into the workforce from college, being specifically in a public accounting firm?
Great question. Yeah, I would say for those who are undecided about internships and things like that, that is the best thing one can do. I know your question was geared towards how you transition from college to workforce, but I really
Mhm.
believe internships is that bridge. It gives you that exposure early on, and it's so important, not just in what you do. You literally could be getting coffee for the team. I don't care what it is, but it gives you that experience to work with others and really to be a team oriented person or individual oriented person. You have to know how to do both. And that's kind of like the rough version that people don't really hear. But I think, any internship, obviously, if it's in the practice that you're going for, it's fantastic. But that is definitely the starting point to bridging that corporate space. And I'd say, the best things just to look out for when one goes into that, just do your best. Everyone's human. Be communicative. Make sure you talk to your HR leads and the team that you're working with. Obviously, communication goes a long way, not just in relationships and dating, but literally the workforce too. It's both personal and professional.
Absolutely. If you can't communicate properly with your team members, everything just kind of falls apart. I feel like with every project, I'm sure many people experience that. And I think that's the hardest thing, at least one of the hardest things for me, moving from college into the workforce, learning how to communicate on that higher level in a
Right.
different way around different things. More specifically, it's not just like, talking to your friends in your dorm room anymore or talking to your professors and asking questions about assignments. It's completely different. So really honing your skills around that and doing little particular exercises and things like that to help you get stronger communication skills is definitely helpful.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things I wish that I did before going into working in the industry would be like researching the lingo of the industry, because I remember going in to I was an intern where we met, and I remember hearing people say like write up, and I was like, what is a write up? What does that mean? What am I write up? What am I doing?
Exactly.
And it's one of those terms that is all over the place in accounting, and it's basically, for anyone listening that doesn't know what that is, it's basically like, usually we would use like QuickBooks, and it's basically taking bank statements or whatever financial information and data inputting into the system to get like whether it's a month or year-end information out of it. But I would say like a piece of advice that I would give is to look up the lingo of whatever industry you're going into, because that can be like they don't teach you that in college. It's like they teach you, the technical terms for things. They don't teach you like the slang and the random lingo that you'll hear around the office. What do you have something that you would say you wish you would have done before going into it, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say those are both great points you guys bring up. The one thing I would add to that is learning how to ask questions and what to ask. It's funny because that sounds so simple, but it actually means a lot. It holds a lot of value. Knowing what to ask and how to ask it, that's like half of any career, especially in auditing. So, that's going back to that point that, I've been in audit for 6 years now, and now I'm shifting careers into forensic accounting. The most important tool that I had at my disposal was knowing how to ask questions to people that I was interviewing, people that were the auditees for that engagement. It's actually, invaluable. So just knowing how to ask questions and what to ask means so much more.
Absolutely. What was your internship experience like? Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that bridge was like specifically for you?
Sure. I'd say my first internship that I did was not the beginning year of college, the second year, so not freshman year, sophomore year. I'm forgetting my lingo because I'm been out of college for quite some time now. No, it's only been 10 years. Actually less, but anyway. My first internship actually was with a wealth management firm, and I learned really quickly that I did not like it.
Okay.
And actually, I think that's great because people need to understand that you don't like something just as much as you would like something, and you won't know that until you just get your feet wet and experience and take that opportunity. So I learned real quick, and it was at UBS Wealth Management, that just was not for me, which is fine. But from there, I was able to get other internships to learn what I did like. So I had a tax accounting internship. Taxes was not for me as well. And then I found my home in auditing. And so I really hit the ground running out of college, going to a local firm that did tri-state area work and really focusing my expertise in that area.
That's great. I think that's such a valuable lesson, especially when you're young, because I just feel like when you're younger, it's easy to get discouraged when you're trying new things. You're like, I don't like any of this. What am I going to do? How am I going to find a career? What is my path? What's my passion? I don't know. But if you figure out some of the stuff that you don't like, it brings you that much closer to finding the thing that you do like. I've definitely had similar experiences in finding my work, and just I'm still, learning every day. And I think that changes with every phase of life too. You don't have to stick with one thing forever. Maybe you like something, maybe it's a little different in accounting, I don't know, but maybe you like something for a little while, for a couple of years, 5-6 years, and you build your career in that, and then you can pivot into another field or do something else that's similar where you can bring over the skills that you learned from your previous work. Definitely valuable to learn about what you hate and don't want to do.
For sure. Absolutely.
So being in the world of accounting, the CPA exam is like the biggest kind of turning point of where you're going to go with your career usually. Just the idea that there's so many strict requirements, and a lot of professional careers are like that too, whether you're a lawyer or anything, really anything in the professional world has some sort of exam or education requirements, experience requirements. How did you maintain, because the process of studying for the exams and getting all of your requirements in can get very stressful, and it's long hours, and if you're working at the same time, it can be tough. How did you maintain your positive attitude towards the profession while going through all of that?
Yeah, that's a loaded that's a loaded topic, but it's important to talk about. I feel like there's a lot of hush hush about the CPA exam because everyone knows it's difficult, but they don't want to talk about it or express it. It is. It's very difficult. I'm not definitely not here to sugarcoat that. It did take me almost 2 years. They give you 18 months to take them in succession. One did time out for me, so it did take me that 2 year, almost 2 year time frame. My personal story is that I started my career at Naraki Smith, and I was there for almost 3 full years. Started studying for the CPA exam about halfway in my tenure there, while I was going for my master's at night. So it was definitely a challenge, but I came out stronger and really more experienced out of it. In the long run after completing it. Now it's easy to say now because I've already done it, but it took a lot of dedication, a lot of weekends staying in, putting your head down, and really the hardest part is having to call your friends and family members saying, I can't make that baptismal, I can't make that first birthday, I can't make our annual reunion or whatever it may be. It's challenging, but you know that you're going to grow professionally and personally from it, and it teaches you how to sacrifice and how to be dedicated to what you want.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to focus on that end goal. And like if you just keep your eye on the prize and say like at the end of this, I'm going to have number one, I'll have my life back. And number two, it's there's progress in getting that accomplished. So I feel like it's really important to just keep your eye on the end goal and just keep focused and determined because it can get defeating. My personally, I took I forget how long it was. I completed them fairly quickly, but I did have to retake one. And I remember just when I got the score for the first one, which is the one that I failed, it really is like that decision-making moment. When you get that failed score, it's like, do I quit or do I keep going? And, a lot of people find it very difficult to keep going. And I feel like if you keep your eye on the prize and just stay dedicated and put in the effort and look back on all the effort you put in to get that done, even if you didn't pass, you've already put in so much effort for this one thing. If you go just a little bit further, you'll get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Being the CPA exam, there is 4 parts to it, so a good thing to start out with is just taking it one chunk, one part at a time, and anything can be done that way. So.
Yeah, and celebrating each one too as you go. I mean, you have to give yourself a little pat on the back every time something you do pass one, or you make an accomplishment, or you hit a milestone of some sort. Even in the middle of studying, maybe you made it to chapter 10, and you give yourself a little pat on the back. Be happy that you got there, and just be proud of yourself every step of the way.
Definitely.
So you've been in a few different areas of accounting now. Can you give us just like a little overview of number one, what drew you to each step along the way, and then just like a idea of what each one was and how they differ and what they're all about?
Sure. If you were comparing me to a world traveler, I'd been around the world in terms of auditing, and the industries I've been blessed to be a part of. But yeah, so I started out working for a firm that really focused on typical private companies, institutions. I was on that side for about a year and a half, and then switched to internal auditing, and that really focused on non-for-profit and public organizations. So you're talking libraries, school districts, and all nonprofits in New York City, Department of Health, Department of Mental Hygiene. These are real programs that taxpayer dollars fund to help people who are in need, whether it's a disability or a senior citizen. So it was really cool getting that experience out of the bat, that's something I'd never change. And I was able to work with some really great managers and directors there at that firm. Actually, I'll name call them. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to hear their name. Had a pleasure of working under Dimitri and Darren at Naraki Smith, and we still keep in touch today. So there's no surprises there. So my path to leaving that first career path at Naraki Smith was really to learn more about what else is there in this audit space. I know I've done auditing for private firms and non-for-profit and what have you, and public. So I looked into the governmental space. So an opening came up at the Nassau County Control's office, and so I went for it. I took the exam and scored well, and was a few months later on was working there in the control's office. Now that was interesting because it's slightly different from Naraki and Smith. At the Nassau County Control's office, we had focused on all vendors that did business with Nassau County, and that's a lot. It's a very long list. And so you're talking contract audits, you're talking environmental projects. One of my biggest audits that I did there was help review cleanup costs for Hurricane Sandy on Long Island and the southern, Nassau County, obviously being in the Nassau County Control's office, but we had found a lot of money recovery opportunities for the county within that. So it's just a different breed of animal in terms of audit space. And ultimately, I had left there about almost 2 years because I found out that salary-wise, it just was not there in the long term. It was more for, I guess, older generations for the benefit side. So, I was obviously far from that. I was in my early 20s, not in my late 60s. So different change of plans led me to the banking industry. And I have to say, anytime someone starts their career in banking, they find their way back. While I was in college, I was working almost full time at TD Bank as a teller. So I knew one way or somehow I'd end up back in the banking industry. Fast forward 6 years, there I am, BNB Bank. I'm a senior auditor running audits, great exposure to state regulators, federal regulators, and with the firm. And it really was an eye opener because I was able to talk to managers of these departments throughout the bank, senior managers as well. And it just opens your eyes to not only how much you've learned along the way, but also how much you have to learn still. And that's with any healthy challenge in life. And I think that's what drives me too. So, I'm someone who enjoys learning, and that just means so much more in terms of professional, at work, and also personally, at home. So I think that's definitely a driver for me. And fast forward today, I'm at K2 Intelligence. So what drove me to go there in the forensic space was knowing that I had a passion for forensic accounting, but knowing it's a very hard area to get into. It's almost a specific niche. And so I made sure I passed my CPA exam and then went on to take the forensic, the CFE, Certified Forensic Examiner license. And today I'm crazy enough to go for the certification in financial forensics. So one day I'll have that too, but not too soon. I have a wedding coming up, so.
Lots of letters building up there.
Yeah, I guess so. I won't be able to pronounce them, but yeah, there.
I think that everything that you said, that's a really great path, and it seems like you've learned a lot from each step and each opportunity you took advantage of along the way. Being able to kind of like take bits and pieces from every part of your experience and every employer that you spend time with is definitely really important, and you speak of them highly, so it doesn't seem like you really left really anywhere with a bad taste in your mouth or poor feelings or anything like that, and there's something to be said about that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I feel like a lot of people that I know who have a long, successful, happy career in just like the corporate business world in general are people that have moved around quite a bit. And I feel like it's part of, it really goes to what you were saying about always wanting to be challenged and try something new. And, we've done a lot of talking with people who are entrepreneurs, working for themselves or stay-at-home parents and stuff. And I feel like the corporate world gets this like stigma around it with a lot of the people in this space. And I think that it's just important to constantly reevaluate where you are and what it's doing for you and where it's going to get you. Because if you're sitting somewhere doing the same thing all the time, okay, maybe a few people will be happy doing that for their whole life, but for the most part, like, as people, we need progress and change, and we need to do something new and be challenged. So I think it's really important to always be like taking inventory of what the position you're in is doing for you and where it's going to take you in order to stay happy in the corporate business world in general.
Yeah, and being honest with yourself about what you're looking to get out of your career through every phase. Because sometimes, when you start out, it's just like, okay, I want to start out and get a great salary and set myself up financially for like a good, launch forward into my adult life. When you're thinking about it, first job post college, I feel like many people go into it with that perspective. A lot of the people I worked with in my staffing career were entry-level candidates. So I would always hear that, get me the job that's going to make me the most money. Get me the job that's going to make me the most money. And like, also, I think there's also something to be said about the fact that like that was in New York City. So like people need money. So there's that, but there's also like something to be said about all of the smaller things and all of the projects that you're experiencing along the way, all of the people that you get to expose yourself to and meet, and what those bring to you as far as value throughout your career as you build your resume.
Definitely.
I could not agree more. I think salary, definitely comes with experience and will come over time. It's hard to be patient when you're young and ready to start your career. You just, you want to have it all, so to speak, but patience really does come a long way in that. And I would say, yeah, that would probably be the worst thing to ask out of the gate for your first career, is trying to seek which job will start you at the highest pay. Now, if it also tends to be a high paid job that you also tend to enjoy, then sure, why not? But I would not have that focus.
Yeah, it's really important to really, like Katie said, take inventory of your passions and your interests. You mentioned earlier that you knew when you were young you had, a passion for numbers and it was physics or this, and now here you are. But just being able to notice that one thing, your passion for numbers from the start, kind of set you in this direction, and that's great that you were able to notice something like that about yourself at an earlier age.
Is there something along with all of these changes that you've gone through in different pieces of your career, is there one thing along the way that kind of told you at each step of the way that it was time to do something different?
Absolutely. And that catalyst of change, or that moment that I knew, for me was actually pretty obvious. And for me, it's when you stop being challenged. Now, I don't mean that in a way that, you go to work and it's like, oh, I'm doing the same thing today that I did last week, because that's going to happen. There's going to be routine, and sometimes that's healthy to build up because the routine will change over time and you have to adapt. But I really mean in the larger sense, even if I do get that next position, let's say, am I really going to change the type of clients that I have, the type of day to day, or, trying to think of long term if you can, or even have that discussion with your senior, with your manager, director, wherever you're at. So I think for me, it was a point that I knew personally that, there's more to be learned, but I wouldn't be challenged in that specific sense. So, for me, I knew it was time to change and learn more about government accounting. And then I learned that, I absorbed a lot of that information, and I was ready to take that with me into the banking industry and learn all about federal regulations, SEC regulations, and then put that in my backpack and then move on to really my dream job where I am now in the forensic accounting space, which, by the way, changes week to week, project to project, and I couldn't be happier. So, my experiences have helped geared me for a role like the one I am in now, and as senior forensic accountant. That's my current title at K2, but really it just means that you're willing and able to be quick mentally, with obviously with numbers, but also with what the client needs. That could be a CEO misappropriating assets, or it could be a banking institution that has some severe sanctions that needs some help with consultants. So it's great.
What is it that you mentioned that you're in, like, basically your dream job at this point? What is it that makes it your dream job?
Honestly, I think the team that you work with is half the battle, right? And I've had great teams. I've worked with great people in the past, but the dream team does exist. You know, for everyone it's different. For me, it's, you know, everyone is diverse in the sense of different, yes, different professional levels, but also different cultural backgrounds and different career paths and where they started. And that brings so much to the table because it's perspective, it's knowing how to understand other people's point of views and being able to work with one another is so valuable. So there's, you know, there's a perfect team going on where I am now, as well as you know, being challenged on every project in a sense, because everything that we do there is new in a sense. You know, it's a new client, new challenge. Even if it's a similar client, they're not going to have the same challenges that they are today tomorrow. And so we really need to bring our A game to everything we do, and that's exciting to me, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's maybe one of the biggest things that people leave their positions for is more of a challenge. Like, if you're too smart for the job that you're in and you're like, this is so draining, I can't do this every day, like, why do I not feel challenged, why do I not feel stimulated, then yeah, it's time to seek something new. And that definitely resonates with me. I've been in positions where I felt that way, and people are just like, I'd be told, like, you're trying to be too smart. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to be too smart. I'm just, like, seeking to learn more. I want to know more about this or that or the other thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can't let that people's negativity around that need deter you from seeking it. If that's what you need to stay stimulated and you're a lifelong learner and you like to learn new things and get more information and expand your knowledge, then there's definitely careers out there that you can find that will suit you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seek them. Just gotta seek them out. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like, you have to stick up for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
if you're in that situation, you feel like you've been doing kind of the same thing and you're enjoying it, but you know that there's more that you could be learning, and, you know, maybe somebody around you is doing something more. You have to speak up, because nobody, I mean, you might have a great manager here and there that will encourage that, what do I want to say? Proactively.
Yeah.
Like, just proactively give you more challenging work. But what I've found is a lot of times you do have to ask for it, because they're not inside your mind. They can't tell you whether or not you feel like you're being challenged. You know, there's no way for them to know that. So really just, like, stick up for yourself, and whether it's changing career paths or taking a more advanced position somewhere else, or asking at wherever you are for more challenging work, you just have to, whatever it comes down to, you have to stick up for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's many positions where you're gonna get things that you haven't asked for in terms of challenges and more stimulating work. Like you said, it's not the most common thing to come across managers that are going to push for that for their teams. If you have one, that's great, but also just, like, being mindful of what you can handle, and say, like, it's the opposite side of the spectrum for you, and maybe you do have a manager who's pushing you really hard and it's overwhelming and it's too much. Being able to be honest about that and take a step back and say, look, like, this part of this work really resonates me, but I don't feel prepared or ready to take on these 10 other things that you want to put on my plate. Like, let me perfect this first, or maybe not perfect it, let me, like, hone my skills on this first, and then I'll feel more comfortable to take on other things. I think that you know, when there's a high demand for high level work within firms and organizations of other types, managers do tend to push a little bit sometimes, and it's hard to say no, but you have to respect like your capabilities and your mindset. That's not to say like don't push yourself and turn down extended work because you just don't want more on your plate, but you do need to understand where your capabilities fall. Like don't set yourself up for failure, pretty much, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I don't know if your experience is similar at all, but I know myself, just the accounting experience that I've had overall tends to be like that. There's such a huge workload a lot of times that it's just, it's for anybody that doesn't know, it's very seasonal. So especially in the public accounting world, if you're doing tax work and even audit work too, from the months of January through April, it's insane. And a lot of times it's just gets piled on and piled on and piled on. And you have to know when to speak up. And it's not always, you have to be careful that you're not just saying, I don't want to work those extra hours. And you have to really be aware of like, is it actually too much for me, or am I just looking at a stack and getting overwhelmed? So really just taking inventory of like, again, I feel like that's like the theme of what I keep saying. Take inventory. Like just pay attention and really get super focused on what your capabilities are and what you're able to handle, and be honest about it. A lot of people get into the mindset of, oh, I feel like I'm just like, people are going to think I'm lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, no, there is a certain point where it is too much. You can't do that to yourself. And there's a health factor too. Like you have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're, being your own advocate as well. So I think accounting, as well as probably a lot of other corporate careers, are like that. So just keep an eye on yourself and make sure you know whether you need more, you need less, and communicate that to those people around you.
Yeah. Those questions are key. Going back to that question theme, if you know to ask, what's typical for a busy season and things like that, and what's expected of me, that goes a long way. Before I came to now K2 Intelligence, I was actually offered several opportunities at other firms, and this is actually a unique experience in my career because as you have more experience, more places are open to receiving you down the line. But there was a firm that their hours on off season were 10 hours a day and Saturdays as well. And I knew that just wasn't for me, and so I had asked a question about, well, what about busy season? How does it change during that, those few months that you pointed out? And so, there pretty much was kind of stay until your work is done. So, I knew we both know from experience that, that you're looking at 10 p.m. days on an early day. So I knew that wasn't the fit for me, not to go back into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you think that there's been anything that you've developed throughout your career that's really led you to be able to consistently stick up for yourself and know yourself a bit more and know your limits and like your abilities a bit better than you maybe were able to earlier on in your career?
Sure. I would point that question and kind of take it towards my experience of, whenever someone's given an opportunity to teach others, that's when you'll know if you're ready for that next step, whatever it may be. So, for example, for me at Naraki Smith, I knew I was ready for a seniorship role. Typically in accounting firms, you go from associate to senior and onwards. Once I was able to comfortably teach interns pretty much everything that associates and seniors do, but obviously with more in-depth, knowledge and skill set, and not just showing them, but explaining them how to do things and the different ways about going, completing it. So I think that's a big step too. Once you have that knowledge and capability of genuinely explaining to someone not only what you're doing, not only how you're doing something, but why you do it, and all those other questions around it, then you're ready for the next step. but you won't know until you're given that opportunity to teach others.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's a good judge of that in anywhere. If you're able to teach somebody thoroughly to the point where they really understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and it makes sense to them, then that's a pretty good indicator that you've quote unquote mastered it, and you can move on to something more advanced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, like when you're able to see other people starting to get burnt out, and you're able to help them like shift and correct that, that's definitely a point that tells you've gained a little bit more expertise too, I think. Because you don't notice that stuff in the beginning when you're early on. It's like just like head down, hustle, hustle, hustle in a lot of corporate environments. But when you're able to like look out for your team members in that way and say, hey, like, do you need a glass of water? Like, when's the last time you got up for a coffee? Like, you were here until 10 o'clock last night. Like, go home, things like that. Definitely when you're reaching that point of confidence and know-how where you're able to point that out for other people, I think that's another turning point in your career as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. This conversation has been so invigorating, but let's just take a quick second for an ad break.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about networking and what you have been involved with throughout your career as far as networking goes, and how, has it helped you? Has it gotten you any opportunities? And what's that been like for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, great questions here. For networking, I would say if it ever comes up, seize the moment, seriously. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it's something new, and it can be frightening at first, but it only helps you grow, even if it doesn't lead to, let's say, that interview, or that, oh, why don't you give me your resume for this firm or role that you really wanted. It doesn't matter. Networking, it's great to meet new colleagues, exchange ideas, thoughts, friendships, relationships. It leads to many, many positive things. And for myself, that really started really in college. You're networking with your friends every day. You don't think of it like that. But down the road, if you guys ever have different job opportunities, you never know what may come up. But definitely, me personally, me, Kathleen, I took advantage whenever those opportunities came up. Like at Noraki Smith, we recruited obviously on Stony Brook's campuses and other colleges on the island. I was more than happy to talk about our firm and what we have to offer. And that was unique, right? Because I was able to add my quirkiness about the firm and really the great people that we work for and who we work for. And that kind of led to some people to be interested in maybe otherwise thinking, yeah, it's just a normal accounting firm. I won't even bother. But, they hear someone like you or I talk about them having a genuinely good experience and learning so much in the industry, and getting to travel to, literally Hoboken and, all these crazy towns people never heard of, upstate New York and tri-state area. It draws people out. I'm very involved in volunteering as well, so there's always network opportunities there. I went to Malloy College as an undergrad, and they're a Dominican college, and it's actually founded by Sisters of the Dominican Order. It used to be an all girls school, all female school, up until recently, actually. But I digress. So there's many opportunities there too. And like I said, it only helps you get the word out as to, what you do and who you are, but more than that, what you represent. So if it's a volunteer function, you're representing, that group and the good work that they do. If it's a firm that you work for, again, the good work that you and your colleagues do. Or it could be, you networking about your family. It really doesn't matter. It could be anything.
Yeah, I think because I got the same opportunity at Jim Balvo Stalzer, where I was most recently, and so I was able to go out and do some recruiting for them, and it's amazing how many people we would give a little information about the firm, but like most of what we talked about was like ourselves and the candidate. Like it was like we would just have like genuine conversations, get to know personalities and stuff. It was so much more about that. And I think what's really important is the people that were the most comfortable talking to me in those moments were definitely the people that stood out. So, you know, the more you go to those things, the more comfortable you're going to be. And then the more likely you are to get an opportunity, because we weren't sitting there, you know, reading your resume and, you know, we were recruiting for entry level staff. So I'm basically not even reading your resume. Maybe I'm taking a quick look at your GPA or something to make sure it's not, you know, a 2.0. But like for the most part, I'm not really looking at that. I'm more interested in, can I work with you? Can you communicate well? You know, are you gonna fit in our culture? You know, what's your expectations for a culture of a firm, and does that fit? So I think it's really important to get out there and get comfortable with that, and just get used to talking to people in general. Like you said, you're networking with your friends from the day you can start talking. So you're, you know, your entire life, you're preparing yourself to be able to communicate with people. And I think it's really important to, going back to our whole communication thing from the beginning, it's really important to hone that skill. I mean, it's on every job description you'll ever see is good written and verbal communication skills.
Yeah.
Everywhere. You're going to see it all over the place.
Yeah, you need to be able to write. You need to be able to read. You need to be able to speak to people and not like clam up. So if those are things that you have challenges with, you need to work on them if you want to get into like a respectable, like high level corporate job someday and not be looked down upon. Like, why does this person not know what they're doing? How did they get here? You know?
Right.
So
you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't communicate that to somebody, then
what good is it? You know?
It's not going to get you many opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. You had something written there that I was interested in.
So you mentioned earlier, it's a little bit off topic, but I was interested to hear about it. You mentioned that you had lived in Italy for a period of time.
Yes, when I was younger.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, and like what, like culturally, I know you spoke about diversity and everything with your current position, culturally and everything, how is that translated into your life?
Sure, absolutely. It actually, at the end of my quick story, you'll see how it comes full circle. But yeah, so my parents at the time, just to give you perspective, I'm first generation, meaning my father emigrated from Italy, so I'm first generation Italian American from my father, but second from my mother. She was born and raised in Brooklyn. Hey, so that's first generation from my father and second generation from my mom. So that kind of brings into perspective, uh, some uniqueness in America today, especially. But so what that means for me is growing up from, I say, kindergarten and first grade, I took in Italy. So I was born here, then we moved there for a few years. Started my education there, came back into second grade, got left back into first because I didn't know the language. I had forgotten English at that point, which was fine. I met some of my best friends that I know today because of that. So I look at it in a positive way. But yeah, so what that meant for me is that, I have a lot of family there and we love to communicate through WhatsApp and all these cool applications today, but we would visit every couple of years. My family and I would go there, and then some years they would come visit here. We're meaning to see them pretty recently, but COVID kind of messed that up. But we'll see each other soon. So how that brings me full circle to my current role at K2 Fin is really they have headquarters obviously in the United States in New York City, Chicago, DC, Texas, uh, and they also have headquarters in Spain and UK, and they're slowly growing throughout that as well. But they do have a manager that heads the kind of European operations in Italy and Spain, and so I'll be in touch with him, and we'll see where it goes. Because I do have a working knowledge of the Italian language and Sicilian dialect language, so that's always fun.
That's great. Have you had any like anything from your culture that's translated into your career that's gotten you some opportunities that you don't think you would have been able to access otherwise?
I think that for me is starting momentarily, so it's definitely exciting to see that come to fruition. Um, but aside from that, it's been obviously helped me keep in touch with family for so many years, and that you know that speaks for itself. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Definitely.
Awesome. Can you talk to us a little bit, bringing it back to like the corporate world and the different firms and stuff like that? Can you tell us a little bit about like the similarities and differences when working for a smaller company versus larger companies, or just like the different sectors that you were in? Can you talk a little bit about the differences between?
sure, not a problem. So yeah, I would say off the bat, smaller firms tend to have a more uh, homey vibe, if you want to call it that. So what I mean by that is, if you have a question or an issue, whether it's big or small, you're definitely going to get an answer, and probably sooner than you think, which is a good thing, right? And you're definitely working with all sorts of experienced people. You're working with other associates, other managers, even partners, and it's common. And that, in my experience, is one of the best ways to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because that exposes you in a way to being able to communicate, one, with these upper management individuals, and two, to be able to confidently talk to others in similar roles and positions, as well as a clientele, so that there's much more exposure out of the gate working in smaller firms. Now, it has to obviously fit, your culture and your personality and things like that. So, what I will say is if you go on those interviews and you hit it off well with, hopefully more than the one person that you interview with, nowadays it's two or three or more, definitely give it a shot. You won't regret it. So that's a smaller firm aspects, and I will say that they tend to be, if you're talking Long Island versus New York City, obviously the island pays a little bit less, but at the end of the day, it's the same experience. So don't beat yourself up if you didn't get the top four, out of the gate role that you wanted. If there's a strong firm on the island, definitely go for it. You won't regret it. Uh, that's why I certainly started, and I technically, well, I'm working from home now because of COVID, but our headquarters of K2 Fin are on Third Avenue in Midtown in Manhattan. So, you'll definitely lead your own career path wherever you want it to go. So don't feel like you missed the boat if it doesn't start there. So bigger, so that's a small size firm. Then bigger size firms are typically 500 or more people. It's more likely, people don't like to say it, but it's more likely you're just uh, kind of siloed into that particular department. At that point, the firm is too big for you to know, certainly to know everyone, but even to know a good number of people. So you might be more siloed into that function or that department, which, isn't a bad thing, but you more over time take on that specialty role, whether, for example, a good way of slicing this up is a giant consulting or accounting firm. You're either in audit, tax, finance, what have you. So, and it gets to be siloed out even more after that. Your federal tax, state tax, so on and so forth. So, it depends on what you want in your career, and it's hard to know and talk about earlier on, out of college, but over time you'll start to realize that, okay, if I stay at this firm and I'm really siloed to one department and I don't see growth in this area or even lateral growth to work in other departments and learn more, that would be your cue to make a move. But at the end of the day, there's those differences, but there's also a lot of similarities, right? So you're still going to have that structure of, your quote unquote boss, your boss's boss, or what have you. You're going to have you're going to have leads. That's really what they call them, is leads on projects, on programs. You have to know how to work with them. You have to know how to communicate, how to stay on top of the deliverable, how to know to speak when something isn't going right. If you're working in Excel and you need to make this project and your formulas are out of whack, just raise a question. Don't try and figure it out after 10 minutes and spend the whole day spinning your wheels.
Mhm.
You'll hear that a lot. Don't spin your wheels.
Yep.
Get your tires checked out. do what you got to do. So definitely raise your voice. But it's interesting. Going back to that question, there is a lot of similarities. It's just formalities is what makes the differences. Formalities of a small firm where you can have that nice, more personal touch, knowing more, if not everyone, of who you work with. If it's about 50 to 70 people firm versus, several hundred and several thousand. So.
Yeah, I think the best way to go about figuring that out is kind of, again, taking inventory of your personality traits and your characteristics that stand out the most in like your professional work and demeanor. Like, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to go to work and have somebody say good morning to you? Like, if that's what you want, and you want your name to be known, and you want to be smiled at, and you want to feel like, I don't know, homey, like you mentioned, and really welcomed and at home within your work environment, then maybe a smaller firm is for you. Or maybe you can find a really great large firm that has small teams that feel that way. It's just a matter of like being able to ask those questions during the interview process and learn a lot about the culture of the places you're considering working for. That will help you be successful down the road. Would you have any tips that you would share for people who don't know really what they want and are kind of looking to figure that out? Has there been anything that you've discovered along the way that's helped you figure out what's better for you?
Yes, actually. And for that answer would be any interview that you have the chance on going on, take the opportunity. At the very least, you'll know that it just wasn't for you. Go through don't just go through the motions of talking about yourself and what you want, but really, take the time to listen to who's interviewing you and ask those questions. What's the culture like? What's the day to day? Am I expected to stay late, come out on the weekends? Do we work on projects together? All those questions are important. So take those opportunities and just learn and listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, raising your voice and not being shy about asking this stuff, because it becomes your life. Like, for most people, at least, I mean, maybe not now during COVID, but in regular times, for the most part, you're seeing your coworkers and your team more than you're seeing your own family for most people in the corporate world. So you want to make sure it's a good fit and you're in a good place where you feel comfortable, and the people that you're working around have, personalities and strong characteristics that really resonate with what you want to be around and what you want to expose yourself to on a day-to-day basis. Because at the end of the day, that's what influences your growth and the way that you continue your career and all of those things. So definitely important stuff.
Are there any like key questions that you always have in an interview? Like when you're interviewing for a company, is there anything that you say like 100% of the time, ask this question because it gives you insight about the company or the culture or something?
That's great. I don't think I've heard that question before. I will say, don't stick to the cookie cutter questions. Every interview is unique, so you don't want to sound like a robot. But it's good to have a list of questions, and you want that. And oftentimes, towards the end, they'll say, "Oh, do you have any questions for us?" That's when you bring out those questions that you thought about. I would say a good one. I don't know if I would ask this at every interview. It depends. Obviously, if you know you want this opportunity, then yes, ask it. If not, don't waste your time. But it's really, how the professional growth works at that firm. Is it that you have to stay X amount of years to move up, or do you have to, acquire a certain skill set or licenses? Explain that process to me. How does growing in this role work? Moving to the next step. Because it's always good to have in mind, a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, even 2-year plan, and it could always change, right? So asking that question at the front is going to mean a lot because it shows one that you thought a little bit about the role that you're interviewing for and what lies ahead.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think that it's really important to understand what you're getting yourself into in terms of, like how long you're expecting to stay at a certain place in your career before you sign that offer letter. If you haven't asked those questions too within the first interview, I'm sure that, as you're going through phases of the interview process and waiting on an offer letter to come through, there will be other opportunities that come up to ask those questions. And if they don't be afraid to create them for yourself, would be my best advice to people. Like, you're going to be emailing back and forth with the person that you've interviewed. Hopefully you're sending them a thank you note. You can include that right there in your thank you note. Like, hey, I was just thinking more on our interview after leaving our meeting today, and I realized that I was still curious about this, or this was left unanswered for me. Could we talk a little bit about that? Do you have some time for a chat or a call today? If it's something that's more in depth and not just a straight, like, 1-2 quick answer. But yeah, don't be afraid, again, to ask those questions and learn the things that you need to know about every organization you're considering before you get yourself deeper into an interview process. You save yourself time, and you save the potential employer time, and having respect for people's time, especially in the corporate world, is really, really important. If I have a call with you and you don't call me for 45 minutes, another 45 minutes until after the call was scheduled for, and you don't say a word to me about why or whatever, I'm not going to be very happy about that. Just like things like that come up in your life. It's like, you have to have respect for the people's time that you're looking to potentially work with. It goes a long way. And it says a lot about who you are,
Yeah. You mentioned before with working for a smaller firm that you have that kind of one-on-one opportunity with upper management and partners. I know that that's something that can be intimidating for a lot of people going into their first job out of college or something. What was your experience? Did you have any difficulty getting used to communicating with upper management and partners with that kind of stigma around them of like, they're the boss and they got the corner office and they're so important and everything, and then what helped you get over that, if you did?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely nerve-wracking at first, right? We're all gonna be like, oh, I'm not gonna just walk up to the lead partner in the firm and just say, good morning, and just to have conversation, or even to ask a question on a project. I will say though, where we started out, my seat was in the aisle towards the snack room. So if you can get that seat, that's always best, because you're going to have a lot more interactions with people when they're going for a snack or coffee break or whatever you want to call it. But all kidding aside, the more interactions you have with those individuals, the better, right? And it's going to happen naturally over time. Don't force it. That just makes it awkward for everyone. You'll end up like a Steve Carell in the office, or a Dwight. You don't want to do that. Over time, you do build relationships. And I would say absolutely at Naraki Smith, being a small firm that it was, the partners would come in and say good morning to everyone. Maybe not individually, but off the bat, that means a lot. It's like, oh wow, they're saying good morning, and we're all here, at 8 a.m. or whatever time it was, ready to start the day, right? So those small things go a long way. Now, you won't get those opportunities all the time. Sometimes you have to be patient for them, whether it be at a work event or a volunteer event or what have you. But they will come, and don't be shy. And it doesn't have to be a partner. It could be a manager. It could be a senior. It could just be reaching out for help. It all counts.
Yeah, I know for me, when I interviewed for my position at Giambalvo Stalzer, I interviewed with the two managing partners. So I feel like that definitely gave me a better opportunity to form that like initial connection, because I feel like sometimes it's difficult to have that initial connection be like when you're already working there. But if that's the case, you just have to take any opportunity possible to form that and have that quick conversation. I know, both Naraki Smith and Giambalvo Stalzer, there was always like a good morning. Like, people came in and said hello really every day. Like, especially like if wherever you're passing by, even if, like you said, they don't say good morning to every individual person, make the eye contact as they walk by and say good morning. It gives them the opportunity to maybe stop and take a quick second to say, how was your weekend or something.
Yeah, it's definitely important. I feel like culture is like, for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, that's one of the top 3 things that I look for. I don't know if I'd say it's number 1, but like good culture is crucial to your success, I think, for many people in any organization. Is if you can't go into work and feel like good and there's like good energy around you on a day-to-day basis, then you're not likely going to be happy in that environment for very long. Right. Like I've mentioned before, most people in the corporate world are spending more time in their office than they are with their own families or in their own house. And maybe not now during COVID, but in normal times, that's what's expected usually. So definitely, take the time to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people when you make the decision to work somewhere. In both opportunities that I've had working in the corporate world for 2 separate firms, I made sure that I took the opportunity to meet with the CEO of each firm first. And the second one didn't have CEO, I just had a bunch of partners. But meeting with all of the partners that I would have any sort of interaction with right from the start was definitely, on the top of my list. And I remember actually asking for it there, like, am I going to get to meet these people? And they were like, yeah, we're happy to arrange that. But I don't know that opportunity would have presented itself if I hadn't asked for it. And I'm really glad that it did, because it helped me to get a better understanding of what I could go for and what I could ask for and what I could secure for myself offer-wise going into the firm. Knowing the person who runs it makes a big difference when you're thinking about it from that perspective too. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this goes back to like taking control over your own career. And when you're, entrepreneur versus working for a company, the idea of I work for them and I do this job that I'm assigned to do is not really, to me, something that's going to make a lot of people, 1, proud of their work, and 2, like, feel like they own it, because it's not theirs. They're doing something that somebody else is telling them to do. So I think it's important to, like, from interview process on, like, own that experience. It's yours. You choose to work there.
Yeah.
And, in that way, it's not so different. You're an entrepreneur, you're doing, you're working for yourself, and, you don't have a boss per se, but really when it's your career and you're working for a company, like, you're still the boss of your own career. You're still in charge of wherever you're going and whatever you decide to do. If you're not happy, you go somewhere else. Like, you have no, especially like if you're not in like a contract position, you're free to go wherever you want to go. And if you're not happy, then do something else. And, I feel like that's a key to like staying happy in that kind of environment, is really looking at it as yes, you report to someone, but you're working for yourself. You're doing your own work, and that's your career.
Yeah, I think it's great to kind of like have the perspective of your employer as like a vehicle to get you to where you want to be in your career, and like, what can you do to help maintain that vehicle along the way? Like, how is it going to get you to where you need to go, but how are you going to keep it up and running to get you there, Right. So it's a give and take, and that goes right back to the very beginning of the interview process. You're interviewing each organization that you're being considered for just as much as they're interviewing you. Right. It's your choice. It's your opportunity. You have to be selected. And sometimes, people don't always have the opportunity to be selected. So if you don't be discouraged to try to create that for yourself once you do enter the firm and you do secure a position and you do start to develop your professional skills a bit more. It comes down the road, but with time. Be patient, as Sal said before.
Yeah.
It kind of goes along the lines of, if there's an opportunity available to you and you're on the fence, go for it. And that kind of starts while you're in college too. So, if there's a perhaps an event or a club which is a little bit more involved, something that you're interested in, just check it out, see what it's all about before you make that decision, yes or no. For me, that was many things, such as, working at campus ministries, uh, getting into volunteering, and it just growed for me personally from there. I was able to go to Puerto Rico last year with a group of dedicated young adults, and we helped farmers on the west coast of Puerto Rico, in Placer, and so many beautiful experiences along the way. That's just one of the many highlights. But don't be afraid. There's a path for everyone, and you just have to take the chance and get out there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sal. This has been phenomenal. So many great little nuggets to share with our listeners. And I think this has been maybe one of our most educational episodes yet. I hope that people get a lot out of this. And can you just tell our listeners the best place to find you if they'd like to connect and network a bit further?
Sure. Yeah. Please look me up on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot. And my full name, Salvatore Ubaldini. Not a problem. I'd be happy to, answer any questions.
Awesome. And we'll be happy to link to that in the show notes for you all too. We have a ton of things coming up this September that we're looking to share with you guys. So be on the lookout for that. And if you have any further questions regarding this episode, feel free to reach out. Bye for now.